Hey guys, I'm Barb and welcome to episode 14 of Creators Campfire. Tonight we have a extremely exciting guest, and I'm incredibly nervous and excited. Tonight's guest is Marie Poulin, and she is, I'm going to say, a Notion god. I should refrain from putting that in, but a Jedi master of productivity and Notion. For anyone who doesn't know, Notion is almost an all-in-one kind of workspace app, and we'll talk about it more as we go in. But for anyone joining us live, if you have any questions, please put them in comments and we'll get to them as we go along. I had a much better introduction, but I've got too nervous. But basically, we'll jump into it the other way. So guys, please welcome Marie. Hey.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much. I did have a much better introduction. I didn't want to read it out, but there we go. So I guess first and foremost, we'll do it the backwards way. You are a designer by trade. So you've obviously got a degree in design, and that's where you started out. And you've been working in design and strategy for like the last 10 years or so. That has slowly, I guess, over the last few years kind of turned into a Notion business. But if we take a step back, what did your world or your business look like pre-Notion?
Yeah, and I was working with my husband. We'd been working together for about 4 or 5 years. We were running a software for course creators. I was doing a lot of web design work, digital strategy, really working with a lot of people who ran online course-based businesses. So we'd help them connect all the pieces behind the scenes, all the tech. And then inevitably, when you're helping people figure out, hooking up their website to Zapier and Airtable and all these different pieces of tech, you're also then helping kind of influence people's workflow.
Yes.
Inherently, right? So it's, I was recommending tools to them. I'm like, oh, you don't have a way to collect your notes. You should check out Evernote. And so I became someone that was kind of influencing other people's kind of choosing of their technical stacks and just integrating all of those pieces. So that's kind of where things were already going. And then slowly, as I was learning more about Notion and then I was introducing it to clients, it kind of took a little bit of a turn. So, but that's kind of what things looked like before Notion.
Yeah. Okay. Can you, I guess there was hesitation. Can you even imagine a world without Notion now?
That would be a very different world for me. Like as you know, I mean, so much of my life, like journaling habits, personal, private, as well as business stuff is all baked into Notion now. It would be very sad to have to move back to other tools. I would make it work, but it has just been such a key part of what is happening now.
Yes. I gave a really bad overview of Notion. Can you give a much better overview of Notion for those that might not know what we're talking about?
No, I mean, I think you did a great job. It is like very much an all-in-one productivity app. I sort of compare it to merging or integrating a number of different tools that people are using, like Google Docs, Evernote, Asana. So it can do project management. It can be a place to track your goals. There's really not too many things that I don't do in Notion. I think probably budgeting is maybe the only thing that I don't do in Notion.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's got some way to go in that. I did try it and I was like, no, not ready yet.
Not quite. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got some work to do yet. So actually I'm jumping ahead, but I'm just going to go for it. So before, obviously, we talk about it, there were a lot of different apps. What does your kind of ecosystem look like now in terms of apps? Is it just Notion, or is it Notion and a few others to just like help it?
Yeah, there's still I still do use Airtable a little bit because Notion's API isn't available yet. So there's still some manual entry of data that has to happen. So I do still use Airtable infrequently. BusyCal is my calendar management. So again, I still do track all my appointments and things like that. I use Calendly alongside BusyCal. Dropbox is still another one. I've essentially stopped using Google Docs almost entirely, which is a pretty big deal. I think a lot of people kind of depend on Google for their ecosystem, but I've been able to pretty much move entirely off of that, which is pretty great. So there's still a few key tools that I still rely on, but Notion definitely has kind of trumped most of them.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess when we're talking about Notion, we're talking both personal and business there as well. So how do you kind of manage the two? and separate them also almost? I know they've got workspaces,
Yeah.
but how does that kind of work?
It's a good question, because I'm not someone who is able to really separate my work and personal life. So I'm like, how can I better integrate these pieces? How can I have a better sense of where my time and attention is going to? So for me, it was all about finding a way to make it work all in the same space, so that I can still jump in and look at work tasks when I need to, but I can still do my daily journaling. So I have a private page in my Notion where I kind of handle all of my weekly planning, monthly planning, quarterly planning, my daily journal, even like affirmations or like my personal manifesto and things that I believe in is all there in that sort of private Marie HQ. But then I can still very quickly jump to team projects in the same space. So everything is still less than a couple clicks away. That's kind of my philosophy, is like I shouldn't be clicking around, going deep. Where did I save that thing? So I have a more like flatter structure, if you will, to make things very, very easy to find.
Yes. Okay. That makes sense. So I guess where I sometimes struggle with Notion is because I guess I don't have a business. I work for a company, and sometimes that's different, because when you watch other people's tutorials or you watch like yourself on YouTube and you're talking about having Notion as a workspace for business and personal, it kind of makes sense because it's your business. Whereas for me to have, I guess, my work stuff in there, it doesn't really make sense. But the personal stuff, I think, it's like amazing. But yeah, I think that's where you've got one up, because it can just all be in there. So do you, I guess, actually pre-Notion, were you all digital anyways, and it was just different apps, or were you ever the analog kind of person?
I really tried to be the analog person. Like I love those pretty bullet journals and everything. And I was trying to, I did have a paper planner for a long time, but I still never felt really consistent about anything until doing my daily journaling in Notion. And it has become a habit that, because it's so easy to fill out every day, it's like a 5-minute journal and all of those little emojis are kind of pre-populated. I can be like 5 avocados today for my energy. Like I love that. And I love how visual it is, that it actually makes it really fun to use. You're kind of incentivized to use it. And then because there are so many relations between my daily thoughts and weekly, monthly, other pieces of data, I can see so much. I can really track my own behavior. I can gain more insight into like what I'm paying attention to and what I'm reading and what influenced what. So I'm incentivized more to continue using this digital tool. So I was never really a big analog person, and I'm definitely not now.
Yeah, no. Forget the pen and paper. So I find that the app is great on Mac or PC or whatever, but the iOS version, it just doesn't work. And that's where I struggle to use it 100%, because, and again, I think it comes back to using your Mac for business and personal, because you are naturally always on there all day. Whereas I guess I'm on my work laptop all day, and then it's like, I have to go and grab that. And that's, I suppose, where I struggle. But are you pretty much all Mac app?
Yeah, I think the only time I really use my phone with Notion is maybe filling out journal at the end of the day. And even then, I'm usually doing that on my desktop at the end of the day. So yeah, I don't use it a ton on the phone. I know it's still kind of limited there for sure.
Yeah, I did see, I think Thomas Frank did an inbox video, which I thought was quite cool, actually. So it was him on the go and just quick dump-ins for your inbox, which kind of made sense and worked on your phone. But yeah, I think that's the one place I struggle to do it consistently. It's like,
it's a thing.
yeah, it's real bad. Okay, so we've kind of skipped the work bit because I got way into the productivity side. I'm just going to go with it for a minute. In terms of, I guess when you start, it's obviously, it can be quite overwhelming, or it can be completely like, well, what is this? Because it's completely blank. But how do you kind of, or how did you rather approach it when you found out about it, and how long did it take you to really get to grips with it?
Yeah, that's a great question, because when I first tried it, I think I tinkered around for a couple months and then I didn't touch it again for another year. So I just didn't quite see like, okay, it's cool, but like it's still another place to check, and I still have to check my project management stuff over here. So it didn't quite And I think also it maybe didn't have all the features with the relational databases yet. So it was just kind of hard to see what was possible with it, I guess. And it wasn't until really I was studying permaculture and I was doing my permaculture diploma, and I needed a place to do very messy thinking, like research, clipping videos, making notes. Like I just needed a place to store lots of different types of information. And Evernote was kind of like my note-taking. Asana was my to-do. I didn't really have anything that kind of blended the two or allowed for way more organic, messy thoughts. And I remembered Notion. I was like, that actually could be a really good use case for it. So I'm going to experiment with that. And I just found myself getting really creative with it. It felt like mood boards. It's like links. And suddenly I was using it in a way more organic way that was really fun. And the further I took it, I was like, well, wait a second. Now I have so much living in here. Wonder if I could convince my husband to like move over from Asana. Well, how could I make Notion work like Asana? So I started to just experiment with making Notion do what I was already doing in other tools. And once I kind of had that nailed down, I could be like, look how it does this over here. And he was very skeptical in the beginning because there were still things that Asana is a great to-do list manager. Like it has those features built in and it does those things really well. But there's lots that it doesn't quite. Like quarterly planning is not a thing that I was able to do in Asana. Like it's just goal setting, things get buried. Like it's great for like, I did a thing, it has a date, check it off the list, right? Yes. So once my husband was able to see what I put together in Notion, he was willing to give it a shot. And once we kind of got the buy-in, it was like, okay, we're moving everything over. And then, so it was like a process of like, okay, can it do this? Can it do this? And slowly moving everything over. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I guess that's quite a daunting task if you just kind of just like, oh, now we're going to use Notion completely. It's
to run your entire life. If you don't, I think if you don't have a plan or a purpose at first, and I've heard some of my students recommend this too. It's like you almost need a killer feature. One of my students called it like, if I can use it to replace my note taking, and there's something specific I finally have conquered and learned how to do, then you're like, ooh, what else can it do? But you need that first entry point.
Yes. Yeah. Going back to, I guess, where it's your messy kind of dumping board, because that's something I've been playing with recently in my mind. I mean, I don't have anything interesting to dump in there, but every so often
I doubt that.
Oh, this could be fun. And clearly it's no fun to anyone other than me. But so I need, and also need a dumping ground. But to me, Notion's actually really structured. And for it to be a dumping ground, I'm like, whoa, hang on, that doesn't work because it's
right.
Yeah. It's like the exact opposite. So how did that work for you?
No, that's a great question, because in the beginning, I was very much using only pages. I was not using any databases. It was like throwing images, making columns, and just kind of throwing information in there, and that worked fine initially. I was like, oh, this is great. But then when we were working on the Asana tasks, it was like, oh, now we need tables and to-dos and dates and properties, right? So they were two very different ways of processing information, right? And they both have validity and they both have importance and a place. So I need a place to do messy thinking, but I also need a place to be very structured when it comes time to do work tasks. So the fact that Notion allowed for both was really interesting to me. And even the fact that my husband and I could look at information in different ways, that was very interesting. Like, oh, I like the board view. He likes the very technical table view. And the fact that we can kind of both get what we need out of it and see it in the way that we needed to see it, or be inspired, or just approach it with a different goal, was very, very interesting. So it took me a long time, I think, to approach databases and be like, oh, okay, these can be fun too. And then I kind of went all in once I saw what databases could do. I was like, okay, this is not so scary. There's so much potential here. And then everything now has like moved into databases. So I still have a couple pages where I kind of give myself that room. I call it like the sandbox, to just play and be messy, but within structure. So it's got the best of both worlds, I think.
Yes, I do love that view thing, actually, because it just like, hang on, today I'm in the mood to look at it a different way.
Yeah.
And yeah. No, that actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I might play around with that again. I think I need to revisit that. Formulas and the like. Yeah. What are your thoughts on these? Because I can get quite carried away and maybe this is me in general rather than actually what it does, but you know, when you start something and you get really stuck into a formula, and then by the end of it, you're like, what was I even doing?
And how long did I spend trying
yes.
to figure that out? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It sounds like that's not just me that happens to. It's a.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I think it can be very easy to over-engineer with Notion, and I think a lot of folks do end up over-engineering before they go, wait a second, I'm just overthinking this, pull it back. So I think that's definitely pretty common, and I don't use a ton of formulas at all in my space. I imagine certain niches or certain people, it makes a lot of sense for them, but I think it gets a little bit overkill for my needs anyway. So it's like, I don't lean too much on them in my own space.
Yeah, no, that's fine. When I was attempting to set up my budget in there, I was like, formulas. And then I was like, I don't need this. I've just got carried away. It's just made it so easy to get carried away.
It does. That's the danger for sure. Yeah.
The amount of times I've actually scrapped my entire Notion workspace and started again because I'm like, I've done it again. I've got too complicated.
Yeah.
So actually, how do you approach that? So when you were moving stuff over, you already had something that you wanted to replicate. So I suppose that was slightly easier because you're like, I know what I want this to look like. I just need to work out how Notion can do it. But how do you approach something now that's new in terms of creating it? Does it kind of, I guess it's an iterative approach, but does it go straight into Notion? Is there paper planning? Is there, I need to work this in Excel and then put it in?
I'm right into Notion right off the bat. Like, I think at this point, I know the tool so well, and there's so many like parameters or like patterns that you're like, oh, I know that there's this type of information that's likely going to need this. Like, I think my brain is already doing that and kind of mapping it out pretty quickly. So I already know. I think originally when I first started consulting, I was doing these reports and I was like making all this documentation and stuff. And it was actually just creating way more work. It wasn't actually that useful at the end of the day. I'm like, let's just use this time to build live together. And so the time I spend with the client is together, recorded, screen sharing. I'm a member in their workspace and I'm moving stuff around and they're guiding the build. And then we're just getting stuff done really fast and there's no overthinking. It's like, because sometimes I think you have to do a thing before you're like, oh, wait, that doesn't work, or that's adding. It's only once you see it sometimes and you've moved information around that you're like, oh, we could do that. Like, it kind of opens up possibilities and closes others. And sometimes you just don't know until you're in it. So I usually tell people to like, try it out, dip your toe in, do a little bit of building, then we'll talk. So it's a bit messy and organic, but we can get a lot done very quickly.
Okay. Do you prefer, I guess your business is the consulting side, but does it make it easier when someone's telling you what their end product wants to look like versus when you are trying to create your own and trying to work out what you want?
Yeah. I mean, definitely constraints are definitely helpful, right? Like, and sometimes people don't know. Sometimes they're like, I need to do this thing, but I don't really know how or what. And other people are much more specific about what they need. So sometimes it's about finding what is the right approach for the person. Well, I mean, it's usually about finding the right approach for the person and asking the right questions to kind of get them to help better describe, or like sometimes there's emotional needs as well, not just technical needs. So it's someone needs to be able to trust the system. So there is an element of paying attention to what gives someone peace and how they think and designing for a way that matches up with how they think. So I think there's a whole meta level happening that maybe the client isn't even aware of, where I'm trying to make sure that the approach that we build makes sense for the way their brain operates.
Yes. It's good that you're that kind of person that can work it out, because I can imagine there's people like me that are just like, I don't know what I want, but I need something.
Tell me what you want.
What? I don't know. I'd be that annoying person.
I love the discovery process. Like, I actually really love that process and seeing some, like, the gears turning and someone getting excited and seeing what's possible. So I love that.
I think you'd get mad at me because there would be no turning. They'd be just like, I'll
just
get back to you. Yeah. In terms of that process, how has that conversation changed with Notion versus what it was before? Is it actually fairly similar because the principles are the same? It's just the software that has changed.
Oh, good question. It feels very different today than it did like a year or two ago, for sure. And I think one big thing that has changed now with doing Notion consulting is the window is much smaller. Like we're getting someone set up within a couple weeks and then we're done. But past clients, most of my clients' average working relationship is like 2 to 4 years. So I'm working with people over a long period of time, developing like a very close relationship, learning the ins and outs of their business. I'm helping them with design elements, marketing elements, putting their websites together, like really building myself almost as a core team member, almost like an operations consultant. So to now be working with people on their Notion setup, it's a quicker, like, let's figure out what you need. Okay, let's build it. Okay, let's tinker. Did it work? We can tweak, but then we're kind of done. So it's a very different kind of working relationship in a way, which is, it's just interesting. It's different.
Yeah. Do you miss the old way of working?
No, because I have my key clients that I have worked with for years. And so I get what I need, like that close, loving relationship with those clients. And then now I don't have to worry so much about those longer, because it's a lot of emotional energy, and like I care for those people, and I know I've seen their businesses grow over the last couple of years. So I get really invested and involved, which means there's only so many of those I can take on, because it's a lot. And I know that I care a lot. So I'm going to like go all in with those people. So I can only have 2 or 3 people like that in my calendar that take up a lot of that emotional energy. And then the rest kind of have to be quicker and not as deep, I guess.
Yeah. But I suppose when you know them, it makes the process easier as well, because you know exactly where they're coming from and how they think already. Yeah.
I already know what they need before they ask me, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, completely. Okay, getting into your workspace and your productivity and way of working, what does your do you like have a set routine? Everyone loves a morning routine or an evening routine, and I guess we've kind of touched upon it with the journaling and stuff, but what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think that does change probably seasonally at different times of the year. Like summers definitely have a different vibe than they do in the winter. And so in the summer, I love the concept of the first hour is yours. So it's just the first hour of the day is for you, whatever you want to do. Is it reading, having a coffee? So for me, it's making a coffee and sitting on the patio, sometimes bringing my laptop out there or my Kindle and just learning something, reading something, all those articles that I've saved. So to give myself that first hour in the morning is really important. And, we live in the Sunshine Coast on BC. So I get to sit out and look at the forest, the birds and the bumblebee. Like, it's so relaxing. Yeah. So in past Marie would have like woken up in a panic, jumped to my computer, who needs what now? Like that constant feeling that people need me all the time. And working with way too many clients on the go at any one given time. So for me now, knowing like where I've been, I'm like, this is very important. Like, start the morning slow, get yourself grounded before jumping into work. So that's in the summers, I definitely spend a lot more time in that sort of peaceful, like enjoying the sun coming up. In the winter, I find it really hard to wake up in the morning for sure. Oh. I have a light, one of those light alarms that, slowly the natural light wakes you up.
Oh, they're amazing.
So it's harder for me. My whole family is like this too. We are like night owls, and it's hard to wake us up. So that's something I've definitely tried to really work at the last couple years. But usually I'll wake up at like 9:30, maybe 9:30 in the morning. In the winter, 10 is like cutting it a little bit late. And in the summer, it's so much easier to wake up. Like the light, I guess, just fills the room, and I'm more ready to go. So the learning in the morning, reading in the morning with my coffee, and definitely kind of setting the stage is a big routine. And then I come to my computer. Usually I check my BusyCal, like what's on the go for the week, just get a sense of what's coming. Always planning my week the week before and the days the day before. So it's just always deciding in advance where your time is going to go, or else it's going to be decided for you. Mm-hmm. So that's a big part of my routine and habits, and just like, have you decided what the most important task is for tomorrow? Because if not, whatever reactive emails are coming in, you're going to be just reacting. Yeah.
Are you a planner in the morning or a planner the night before, so you know what you're starting with?
Night before. Yeah, it's kind of like end of day. Once the day is done, it's like, okay, what's coming up the next couple days, and just make sure that the calendar kind of reflects what's happening there. And then, yeah, checking that my Notion tasks, like I usually have Notion and BusyCal open at the same time, and I'm looking at the tasks and like, okay, is it mapped correctly? Is there something where I'm like, whoa, I have way too many tasks in Notion, but the calendar is not as available. Like, so just always just kind of checking at the end of the day, like how off is my planning compared to what my intention is.
Yes. Yeah, we're not great at estimating time. No. Are you someone who calendar blocks for your work? Is it for tasks? Because a lot of people love tracking their time, or specifically saying 3 to 4, I'm going to go and do this or something. Is that something you do?
Yeah, like I have the blocks set up. I use like repeating blocks. So it's, every Tuesday and Thursday, there's like a deep work block and a deep work block. But then in Notion, I can see what are my 2 deep work blocks, because it's like a task that's categorized with deep work. So I can kind of match them up and be like, oh, do I have more than 2 deep work blocks? Because then I know it's going to be a really intense day. So I do calendar block. I don't get so nitty gritty. If I have a bunch of small tasks, I might be like, oh, there's my buffer block where I'm like hitting all of those small tasks. So they're like loosely mapped, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. But it's not, 3:30 must do this specific thing. Yeah. Okay.
I'm not rigid about anything. Not at all.
That makes me feel better, because I can't do that. And it's quite ridiculous, because I'm incredibly structured and a routine person. But if you tell me I need to do something at 3:00, that's a task. I'm like, no, I don't want to.
Don't tell me what to do.
Yes, stop it. I don't know if this is something that you struggle with, but so in the week where I'm like at work 9 to 5 or something, or I've got things planned in the evening, when there's a lot of stuff on, I find I'm way more productive, because it's like, okay, I really need to get something done in this half an hour. Then it gets to Saturday and Sunday, and if I don't have anything, I'm literally just sitting there, even though I'm sitting there going, I've got about 20 things to do today.
Where do I start? Right?
Yeah. Yes. How does that planning process work for you when you clearly won't have as much free time as me, but when you have that, how do you kind of plan the free time, but still personal stuff? It's not like work, but it's still work, if that made any sense.
Yeah, no, I think I know what you mean. Like I have some planned blocks in my calendar that are like errands, or like the bookkeeping and finances, or like in Saturday, Sunday mornings, I have a 2-hour block called brain time. So that's my time to like read all those articles that you wanted to read, and those books that you're excited about, and the podcast. And I've set that time aside. So even some of my recreation time, I try to leave at least a couple blocks that are like, that's the time when you do that thing, right? Because you said that was important. Yes. So I wonder, maybe for you, it could be giving yourself a little, like maybe a little more structure of, well, I know I've got these 4 categories of things to do. Some of it's administrative, some of it's like things I've had on my list to do forever, but I never get to. Like maybe for you, having a couple little more routine time slots in your calendar to do that could be helpful.
Yeah. How do you keep the meeting with yourself, though? Do you find that?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what I struggle with, is like if someone's told me to be somewhere at a time, I will absolutely be there. If I've told myself I need to do something, not a chance.
That's taken a long time, because I've definitely been the same way, where there's like the people-pleasing tendencies, and it's just external accountability. It's way easier when someone else is kind of expecting something of you. And I think you kind of have to bring it back to like, what do you want and who do you want to be at the end of the day? Of like, if I want to be someone who can write a book, or, wants to do a TED Talk or whatever it is, well, there are certain activities I'm going to need to do that are going to get me there. So how important is that goal to me? So part of it, I think, is reviewing your goals, creating those. For me, it's like pages in Notion that like inspire me, or like, who do I want to be, and what's it going to take, and what are the skills that I need that are going to get me there. So, with permaculture, this is like a 2-3 year project to work on my permaculture diploma. So that's like a long-term project. Well, how do you break that down? Right. So that's part of every Saturday morning, is like, what are the permaculture activities or learnings or things that I should do that will just inch me a little bit closer, right? Like that, just another step. So it's like reminding yourself of where you're heading and why you want to do it. And then just making sure you've got something in your calendar, even if it's tiny, that is inching you toward that. So that's kind of, it's like you almost have to treat yourself like a client. Like if I want to go there, I need to take my needs seriously, and I need to put myself in the calendar as though I'm a client, and really treat it as sacred time in advance, put it in the calendar. Another thing that's kind of helped me is the 12-week year. I don't know if you've heard of that book.
It's like right there, and I haven't read it.
Oh, it's good. Like I go back to it very, very often. And one of the things, and I believe it's from that book, is that they have you do is every quarter, you actually block off a week between quarters. And it's like a time to reflect on what's happened and plan what's coming up, but it's that buffer week. And so I'm trying to get in the habit of doing this, is blocking it out in the calendar so it's just not bookable, right? Because when you have a Calendly link or people can book your time and whatever, and you kind of, your time gets taken away very quickly. Yeah. Well, having that one block where I say, nope, there's 4 times a year where you can't book me because I'm working on my own stuff or I'm leaving time for that. So it's like learning to treat yourself as important as you treat other people. And I think that takes a long time to really learn. It really does. But it's like your goals matter and your needs matter. And who do you want to be?
Okay, I'm going to start that one next.
Awesome.
Just move to the top of the list.
One.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I do this thing. Okay. So books. Before I ask for book recommendations, in terms of how you read and take notes on books, what does that look like? Because I've been playing with it, well, for a long time, but more recently I've started writing in my books, which was, like sin before. But what's your kind of process?
So lately, it's usually Kindle. I have all books on Kindle. And then I use Readwise, which also integrates with Notion. And so I highlight a lot. And that was something I learned through Tiago Forte's Building a Second Brain course, this concept of progressive summarization. So to go through something first, and you're kind of doing these high-level highlights, but then you're going through your highlights, and then you're bolding the important points, and then you write an executive summary at the end. So it's because when you're reading books, over and over again, it's like sometimes, I don't know if you've ever had this, you go back and you're like, I read that book and I thought it was good, and I actually can't remember a core concept. Like, what did I take away? Right?
Yep, all the time.
Then what's the point, right? Yes. So I'm trying to get in the habit now, like better highlighting as well, because I think when I signed up for Readwise, I don't know if you have Readwise, but it syncs and pulls any highlights from Kindle, but also from Medium, Instapaper, Twitter, like different sources. It pulls them all together. And in the beginning with Readwise, they actually send you like a digest. You can have a daily digest or a weekly digest that pulls some of your old highlights. I'm like, oh yeah. But looking at some of the older books from my Kindle, some of those highlights, I'm like, it was like half a sentence that it meant nothing. There was no context. So I realize even now the highlights that I'm making are actually a lot more full, like it's the full thought. I'm not highlighting just like a couple words or something. So it's almost like, what does my future self need to remember about this book? And highlighting accordingly, making sure that you're kind of saving those in the right way, and then adding any additional notes that you want to. So I think it's great that you're filling out your like writing on the books. I think that's actually great. Yeah. For me, the digital allows me to like search it and access it more quickly and kind of tag it and stuff. So again, I'm a digital girl, but
I keep trying, and it's ridiculous because I love tech. And I love the whole digital side of things, but there's just something about it that, so with highlighting, and actually, before I forget, I think it was Tiago Forte's progressive summarization that got me started on the journey to start writing and things. I was like, yes, that's exactly what I need. But with the highlighting, so I find I now no longer read non-fiction books on Kindle because I find that I can highlight, but it's so annoying to write the notes at the time that it ends up being a highlight and then I never go back to it. So that's why I ended up stopping. But yes, in an ideal world, I would stop being such a idiot and just do it on the Kindle, because that would be so much easier. So I'm doing it the long way. But I guess you then take those summaries Yes, because it's now got the integration from Readwise. You can pull them straight into Notion. They're there. You can summarize.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes
And in the case
sense.
of a physical book, like I do still sometimes, there's some books that just like don't work as well in Kindle. Maybe there's more diagrams or illustrations. So in the case of where I do have a paper book, I actually will have my laptop open and I have an entry for that book on Notion. And so I will go in and I'll just be like, ooh, and I'll just randomly add notes. But also Readwise has an iOS app where you can take a screen capture of the text and actually highlight, and it turns it into text and then adds it to your Readwise. So it's like, what is happening? The future is now.
Yes. Okay.
So that might be something to consider. Yeah.
I will definitely check that out. Okay. Yes. I'm going to Google that afterwards. Staying on this kind of topic, how do you then, and I think it was, I want to say it was Valentin Perez that I saw with Ali Abdul, and he's got like this tree forest thing in Notion, which is insane. But how do you kind of pull everything together? So when you're, so it's one thing to take notes from a book and each book separately, but obviously the whole point is that you bring that knowledge all together and you start connecting those dots that way. How do you do that in Notion? Because I imagine you would somehow.
Yeah, so I have a knowledge hub, which is kind of my elevated wisdom, right, from all sources, books, articles, YouTube videos, you name it. But then I also have a master tag database. So everything gets tagged, like tools get tagged, books get tagged, like you name it. So I can go at it from the tag level. I can go at it from I have a learning dashboard that I create that's like, what are my active books? What are my key tags that I'm focused on this quarter? So I'll have like 6 different tags, like maybe it's workflow or productivity or whatever. So I use those tags as like a visual gallery, and I can see like 6 of them at the same time. And then if I open it, I can see all of the articles that I've clipped, all the content I've created that relates to that tag. Everything is like tied together through that master tag database. So it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
That's like genius. Okay. How long did that take to set up and kind of like work out?
Yeah, good question. Like I think I saw other people looking up like, oh, is there any way to have tags across different things in Notion? Because every database is so separate, right? And I thought, well, I mean, you could do that through a database. Like, what would that look like? And it was kind of an experiment that I stumbled into, and I was like, okay, I'll decide if this is useful. I'll see if as I'm using it, if it becomes useful. And yeah, I just found like the more that I used it, the more it just got filled with more and more tags. So it's not like I went in advance and added, oh, here's all the tags I think I might need. I just added to it through my entries into other databases, and it just kind of grew over time. And so now it's got like 350 tags maybe. And then I can sort by tag. So I can be like, or like, for example, I'll sort by knowledge hub. So I can see chronologically which are the tags I'm using most often, like what am I paying attention to more often? And so I can see like best self or productivity or finances. I can sort of see where most of my time and attention is going to. And then I can also see things like, well, how much content am I creating and in what categories too? And are there gaps that maybe I'm not covering? Oh, I haven't written anything about money yet. Maybe I should write about that. So it does become a tool for just being more creative and paying attention to like where your brain is spending time.
Yeah. How much time do you spend reviewing things? And do you have a process for reviewing things? Because again, I get to a point sometimes where I've got so many things and I can't remember which ones need updating, which ones need checking. And it's like, well, I need a list for the list. Did you have kind of a master? I think it was the other Marie that at some point must have had, and I think she did it by what mood she was in as well. But do you have something that kind of tells you how to tackle your Notion workspace?
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely a habit that I think is so essential and can like totally transform your day-to-day, is having some kind of review process, which I do every day and then every week. And then I also have a collect and review or like collect and process dashboard that embeds my inbox, my knowledge hub, my notes and ideas. And what I do is I filter it to show anything that doesn't have a tag, because then I know it hasn't been processed yet. Right. So anything that, and I also have a master people database too. So when I save an article, I'm reading it, I will do that progressive summarization. I'll make that executive summary. So anything that doesn't have a summary, hasn't had metadata added to it, like the author and the tags, I know that's like an unprocessed piece of information. So then as part of my dashboard where I can see all of those unprocessed pieces of information, usually that's my like Saturday morning or Sunday morning. It's like, okay, cool, time to like go and read those articles that you said you wanted to read. And then once I've gone through it, I decide where do they go? Is this a book that I want to read? Is it something that I delete? It's not important anymore. Do I need to connect this up with a project? And that's where I go through and kind of have made that part of my process as a weekly thing. But I think if you do that on the daily a little bit too, even if it's like 5 minutes a day, just like clearing some of those out, you can start to get out of that, oh gosh, there's like a giant list of like all the one day, someday maybe reading that I said I would do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, I know that.
Yeah. Been there several times. And that's probably what starts with it. Actually, what I've realized probably in the last week, and I think it's exactly what you're saying, it's more the process than the tool, because if you don't have the review process, it doesn't matter if you're using Notion in the best way ever, because you're not actually using it. So you need to create the system to get the most out of the tool.
And I think that's really the hardest part, is if most people don't have any systems background or systems training, you don't even know how to build that. But for me, it's a problem to solve. It's like, oh, how can I see the information that needs to be processed? Well, I know that I've added things to my knowledge. Like I'm able to, oh, well, I know what that would look like in Notion. I know how to build it. And I have like the systems background to be like, oh, well, this is how I would approach this. So it helps make crafting that a lot easier. And I think it can be very overwhelming for folks if they haven't had any of that sort of background. So I'm like, oh, here's how I would solve it. And people are like, how did your brain think of that? I'm like, I don't know.
It's just in there. Yeah. I was just going to ask, and I think you've just answered it unless I misunderstood, but how much of your background helps or has helped with the Notion planning and building and getting the most out of the tool?
I suspect a lot. Like it's hard. I guess do you think I ever would have thought that like this would be a thing that like being one of the best in the world at? I'm like, that's a super weird idea. And why is it? Like, why did that become my thing? So I've definitely been thinking about this too. Like, what is it that has allowed me to make it more accessible for other people too, which I think is something interesting, that people are like, oh, I saw Notion, but I didn't really think twice until I saw the way you were applying it. Like, oh, okay, that's interesting, right? So there's something about applying the thinking to the tool that kind of shows people what's possible. So why is it that, like, I've thought about this a lot. Like, I don't know if it's like training specifically or experience, or the fact that I've sort of been a generalist for a very long time and seen so many different tools. And part of my job was to help people find the best tools for the way that they think. So maybe that ability to adapt it for these different, or if you're this kind of person, you might, like being able to see the possibilities and things, being very familiar and comfortable with new software and being able to tinker quite a bit. I did some training and talked about like design thinking before, in learning to be comfortable being in process and being in experimentation mode. So it doesn't faze me to have something be messy and incomplete and being in experimentation mode. Whereas I think for other people, their perfectionistic tendencies come up and they're like, like this is really hard for me to look at something that feels messy. But I'm like, trust me, it's going to get way messier before it gets better, but that's part of the process. And so I think being able to, in a way, coach people through that and be like, don't worry, like it's going to get better. Like this is just part of the process, and getting people more comfortable with the building process. So those are just some of my suspicions of like the systems background, the design thinking, being comfortable with change, being comfortable with that imperfection has made it really accessible. And I don't know. It's hard to know in retrospect, like how did this even happen or what led to this? But I do think it influences.
Yeah, you're right. Because I'm one of those people that looks at it and goes, it's not working, scrap it, start completely over. Whereas I guess you'd be like, no, hang on, this is a learning. Let's take it slowly. And you've worked with enough people and have enough experience to understand how different people think, and therefore how different people will want their system set up, which I think is a huge advantage, to be able to understand the other person.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. We touched a little on goal setting earlier. So I guess people used to say, you set the goal for the year, and a lot more recently, people are more like, hang on, quarterly goals, let's split them down, 3 months, 1 month. And I know you do the quarterly review as well. What kind of advice would you have for people setting goals and going about that? Because I have always gone, yeah, and then I've stopped myself. So is there a good way to approach it for someone who's not necessarily used to it, but wants to achieve stuff, if you know what I mean?
Yeah. When you say you stopped yourself, was it like you stopped yourself from even like naming the goal or saying what you wanted, or?
Yeah, I'm incredibly bad at being specific. I'm like, I know I need to do something and I want to achieve, but I don't know how realistic it is or something. So I just pick something random. But then because there's nothing set, it's hard to then work towards something because you have nothing you're working towards.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of a skill to cultivate. Like, I think I definitely struggled with naming really, really long-term goals. Like, I think it always was, because my career too has like meandered so much. I'm like, well, how could I possibly set a goal when like my life looks nothing like it would have, a few years ago? So but I think the process of even setting the goal and just thinking through what it would take to meet it is part of what's important, I think. So I know in the 12-week year, and I know in even like Tiago's course and a couple other courses I've taken, they force you to go to like 25 years. Like, start with a really ridiculously long-term vision. It's scary, right? You're like, what? When I'm like 50 something, what does my life look like? Mm-hmm. And the idea is that we don't really know probably what projects we're going to be working on, but we probably know a little bit like who we want to be, how we want to feel, what our life might look like in terms of, are you surrounded by family? Is there a certain part of the world that you're living in? Is there a certain ease or whatever to your life? So once you start to get a little bit more concrete about what your long-term life looks like, it starts to get a little bit easier to start creating projects or goals that at least inch you toward that. So like for me, a goal of mine over many, many years was like, I had such stage fright. I was so afraid of public speaking was my number one fear. And I just saw other people succeeding, being on stage. And I remember thinking like, if I could do that, I've made it. Like, that seems like the hardest thing in the world to do. All these eyes on that person, like, oh my gosh, the idea of sharing your own frameworks with an audience and creating impact for people, that was the most terrifying. But like, there was something about it that I envied or that I wanted, but I was like, that seems so impossible and so far away. But if I want that, if I want to do a signature talk, or if I want to speak on a stage, or I want to do something like that, what would it take? Okay, well, maybe saying something like, I want to do a workshop, like maybe something smaller. Like, what's the first step that I could do that would at least move me in that direction? Well, I know that now I can break it down and be like, well, what skills do I need to build to be able to do a talk, right? I probably need to learn a little bit about storytelling or body language, or I could hire a speaking coach. Like, once you start to break down those big things, you can start to be like, well, I know I'm not there yet. And the whole point of setting a goal is to move you out of your comfort zone. The point is, like, we don't have what we need right now to be able to reach it, or you would have reached it. So okay, now it becomes simply a project to break down of like, okay, I've got some skills I need to learn. Who do I need on my side to do that? What support, like I've hired leadership coaches, speaker coaches. I've done speaker training. I've done acting classes. Like, I have done whatever I needed to do to conquer the fear of talking in front of people. It was like seriously crippling. Most people would never know that necessarily. But it's been something I chipped away at and hired and invested so many books, so many coaches, so much practicing in these really like smaller, safe environments. I did a speaker boot camp with Shine Boot Camp, and that was incredible, right? Just to get all the tools that you need, from the learning about presence on stage, learning about crafting a 3-part story arc. Like there's so many skills involved with speaking or presenting or whatever that when you don't really know where to start. So, I mean, I know it's a very long-winded way of answering your question, but it's like, if I want to comfortably speak about my ideas and not be held back by fear, to me, that was a goal that over 5 years, I've like broken down into these, okay, could I get one tiny talk? What would that look like? Right? So.
Yeah. Okay. You make it sound, well, I was going to say you make it sound easy, but it's not. But you like the process is yeah, you know what I mean. Obviously, it's not easy and it's taking a long time. And I think one of those things is you have to realize that it's not something that's going to change overnight. And I think it's such an easy thing to give up on when you don't see that progress. But like you've said, it's taken 5 years for you to get to where you are now. So actually, if it doesn't work after a month,
and even more than that, right? It's like even now people are like, oh, well, you're on YouTube, so like you're obviously comfortable with that. And I was like, oh my gosh, even 2 years ago, if someone had told me you'll have a YouTube channel, like I would have believed that. But it just ended up being the best channel to describe, like to help people with Notion. So it was unexpected, and I've had to learn so much even in that process. Like comments, people could be horrible on YouTube, like developing a thick skin, right? So it's really easy to see, I think, where someone is at now and think that they were like, oh, well, they're just a different breed, or they're like designed for that, or like I'm not type A like that, I couldn't do that. It's like, you can literally do anything you want, but you have to kind of have the map or the courage. I think it's a lot about the courage to show up and do what it's going to take to inch you forward. So sometimes we don't always know what those bigger things are. Sometimes they're more abstract. I knew for me that like speaking or sharing my ideas in a bigger way was important. So I've just found these little goals along the way that have kind of inched me there as part of it. Financial stability, right? Like a lot of us want financial stability, to not be working into our 80s. Like, how can I have a little bit more balance in my day-to-day life? Okay, well, you can start, no matter how abstract your goal is, you can reverse engineer pieces of that. Like, do I need to raise my rates? Do I need to bring on 10 clients by the end of the year? Like, it's just, I think, having the courage to say it out loud, map it out, and then really figure out what are the milestones that are going to get you there. And then I think one of the most powerful questions, and I think it's in the 12-week year book, is what is likely to challenge me on the way to getting this goal? So when you identify in advance what is likely, and like procrastination, fear, like there's any number of things that could come up. But if you're honest about it in the planning, then you can say, well, how am I going to work through that when that thing comes up? Right. How am I going to avoid procrastination? Yeah. What are some techniques? And it just forces you to think through it, and it starts to become more concrete. So I do think the goal setting stuff is habitual. Like, it takes time and practice to name it, to follow through on it, to really make it a habit. But it is something that has, I think, for me, been life-changing to adopt as a habit of, like, every time I've set a goal and been like, I want to earn this much this year, or I want to do this crazy thing. When I've said it out loud and I've made a plan for it, I've been able to reach it every time.
Okay, I need to follow this process. I need me one of those. Yeah. I'm just going to finish this up and start reading it tonight. Just scribble all over.
Keep me posted. I'll expect a full report on Monday.
Yeah. The sad thing is, if you tell me, I'll do it. But if I tell myself, it's not going to happen. While we're on books, are there any other books that have impacted your life, or that you would call out that are just, must reads or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, some of them too will depend if you're, entrepreneurial or full-time or whatever, but Profit First was a game changer hugely. If you want any money recommendations as well that are not necessarily entrepreneurial, Worry-Free Money is an incredible book. It's written by a Canadian, so it does kind of slant slightly toward Canadian audience, but it's still very, like, the principles are very universal. Yeah. Okay. And Deep Work, another great one. I like Deep Work, 12-week year. Yeah, those are some of the, like, key
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to check out the first two. I don't think I've come across either of them, so I will have to.
Well, Profit First definitely a bit more like your business finances. So I think it's more applicable for those that are self-employed, but definitely habit changing book.
Interesting. Well, maybe one day.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Is that your goal? Is that a goal that I heard?
I think so. I think it's probably secretly been a goal since I was a kid that I just kind of, taught myself out of. And just like, so yeah, I don't know how though, and that's kind of maybe why I keep going, nah, I don't need it.
That's such a great point and ties in with the goal thing. I think a lot of us are actually afraid to name those big nebulous goals because we don't know how to get there. But I think it's so powerful to name it. And even if you're like, it's not something I want to do right now, but maybe in 5 years, like, or however long, but just even putting it down, like writing it down, typing it, whatever. And then you can work out the problem solving bit like in smaller chunks, like even starting a podcast, like is something that is going to move you in that direction. Right. So you're already taking those little actions. It's not even little, like starting a podcast is not a small thing.
Everyone's doing it these days.
I'm scared to do a podcast.
No, you should do. Are you kidding me? You should absolutely do a podcast.
It just seems like so much work.
It's actually not, because if it was, there would be no way in hell I would have done it. I'm the laziest person on this planet. I promise you. There is a reason I live stream it. Because there's no editing.
You're going back.
And you just takes out so much work. And actually yours would be great to live stream because you could pull some stuff up. I mean, you're doing it anyway, let's be honest. Your office hours are just insane. But yes, I think you should start a podcast. That'd be great. Do it. It's really easy. I promise you.
Okay.
I will be there along with everybody else in the world. Let's be honest. Okay, I'm conscious of the time, and I do have a bazillion more questions, but I'm not gonna do that to you because I would carry on. So my last, it's probably a crappy question to end on, but I'm gonna end on it anyways. What would you like to see from Notion in the future?
Oh, that's such a good question. Oh, man.
Why you think I'm just going to tap myself on the back as if I've come up with a great question?
I mean, what I'd like to see from them in the future. That's so hard. I don't even know how to answer that. There's obviously the feature pieces where, I hope they do this, and I hope they do bi-directional linking and things like that. Maybe there's almost a bit Roam style. If I tag this, it also shows up in the other page. There's lots of little technical things like that I've just, I guess, managed to work around. That I'm like, whatever, one day they'll figure that out. I trust in them. But I think my hope for Notion, I think it's really easy when you're a big tech startup that's been valued at a lot of money, that I hope they stay true to the features that the mass people want to see, and that it doesn't only especially since they've made the personal plans free and that sort of thing, which means that most of the revenue will come from enterprise plans, which then is likely to influence some of the features that get made, right? So I just hope that they can find that balance between making sure that the average happy Notion user that uses it for personal still has all of the sort of technical capabilities that they should have, while also meeting the enterprise needs, I guess.
Yes, I agree. Especially as a free personal user. Don't take it away from me.
Yeah. I'm curious for you. What do you wish? What do you wish it could do? Or
I kind of want it to do, and I don't know if it's overcomplicating something that doesn't need to be overcomplicated. But maybe some graphs.
Oh yeah. Yep.
But again, I don't know if that's just me and my analytical mind going. A couple of graphs would be good. To see, especially even for habit tracking or something, or mood tracking, but even with finances and stuff, because then you can start to see the patterns that you might not necessarily see in a table, and you can go, oh, that's what that looks like.
Great point. That's a great point, because a lot of those insights I'm making myself, I'm like, oh, I can go to my journal and I can filter the view and count things up, but that would actually just make it a lot easier to have those insights. That's very smart.
Wow,
You're onto something.
You can pass that along to them.
I will actually. That's super smart. I'm like, why didn't I think of that?
You probably did. I probably stole it from you in the first place.
No, I swear.
Okay, cool. I'm not going to keep you any longer.
Guys,
Guys,
I do have time if you wanted to like rapid fire through any of those questions.
I want to. No, I'm not going to do it to you, because they're not going to be quick answers. I could rapid fire about just you, if you want a quick personal rapid fire.
It's totally up to you. I don't have a hard stop, so I can chat a bit longer.
Okay. I'm gonna do a normal rapid fire, because this is always
pressure's
fun.
on. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
What's your favorite condiments?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to add that to the list.
Someone asked me that on a podcast, and I answered hummus, and then everyone gave me a hard time because they're like, "That is not a condiment." I'm like, "But you can put it on a sandwich." Anyway. So.
Yeah, no, that's cheating. I mean, I'll give it to you. Oh, notion God, but yeah, probably isn't one. But I'll let you have it.
Fine, mayonnaise, the backup answer.
Yes. Okay. Now we're talking. All right. Okay. We'll do this really quickly. What's the first word that comes to your mind right now?
Red.
I swear you were going to say hummus. Favorite pizza topping?
Oh, paneer.
Interesting. Okay.
There's an amazing like butter chicken paneer pizza here. That's incredible. So yeah.
I mean, I do love paneer. It's like my favorite, but I don't think I've ever had it on a pizza. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh, wow. How do you answer that quickly? There's so many possibilities. Oh, wow. I don't know, take away people's suffering.
Oh, that's really nice. I'm incredibly selfish. I'm like, I want to read people's minds.
I already feel like I can do that.
Yeah, okay, that's a really good point. Yeah, you probably do know what everyone's talking. What TV show are you binge watching right now?
Oh, what did we just finish binge watching? I mean, I can't think of the most recent one, but probably Queer Eye was a fairly recent one.
Fair. What's the top thing on your bucket list?
Oh, I feel like COVID's kind of messed with that a little bit.
Yeah.
I was supposed to go to Norway next month, and that's not happening.
No.
So that's a bummer. Damn, I'm gonna have to think about what's on your bucket list.
So many things. I want to visit all 7 continents.
Wow. Yeah.
And all 7 wonders of the world.
Wow. Okay, that would be pretty.
My ultimate, I think.
Yeah. One random weird bucket list thing is like I'd like to build my own house.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah, that's cool. That's very cool.
Like learn all the skills that it would take to make that happen. With some help, I'm sure, but it would be pretty cool to build your own house.
Yeah. Okay, that would, and a great YouTube series, by the way.
There you go.
Looking forward to it. Pancakes or waffles?
Pancakes.
Nice. Netflix or YouTube?
Netflix.
I was going to say iOS or Android, but I have a feeling I already know the answer.
iOS.
Yeah. Okay. And final one. What's one not Notion app that you would recommend to everybody?
I think the boring answer would be 1Password.
Okay. Yes.
Yes,
it would.
It's like an essential. I mean, lately I got Hey, the email app, hey.com.
Okay.
I love it now. I'm like, I can't go back to.
Oh, okay.
So
fair.
Nice. There are some cons, but I think it has significantly reduced my email anxiety. So I'll put that.
I don't know much about it other than.
By the founders of Basecamp.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they know their stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So it's going to be good.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, that was very fun. I'm glad you had time for that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That was awesome. First and foremost, thank you so much for coming on and talking. We didn't talk much about your business and stuff, but I had the most fun ever. So thank you very,
Thank you
very much.
so much for having me. It was really fun.
Awesome. Guys that are watching live or on the replay, thank you to you too. And if you want to follow Marie, then she is on both YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram at Marie Poulin. And also you can check out our website at mariepoulin.com. Go and check out Notion. And if you have no idea where to start, or actually even if you do know where to start, go and check out Marie's either office hours, videos, like literally anything. And she does have a Notion mastery course, which looks insane, by the way. I was reading through it and I was like, wow, this is cool. I think I might have to jump on this at some point. Yeah. But Jedi Master, self-proclaimed, but I think Notion God. So seriously, guys, go and check her out. And thank you. Honestly,
thank you so much. It was super fun. Great to, yeah.
Awesome. Right, guys, I'll see you same time, same place. Actually, I'll be here tomorrow. It's a Sunday. I'll be back tomorrow. But otherwise, thank you, and I'll see you guys. Bye.